Alright, let's bring a universe to life by switching on a video game, or perhaps an electronic game. Well, it has visuals, so I guess I'll call it a video game. Yeah, I'm here to talk about the universe portrayed within a video game. So, let's jump to that universe. In this case, we're gonna take a look at the universe of, well, Star Trek First Contact. Well, Star Trek to be exact. First Contact. You know what? My favorite thing about Star Trek First Contact, I liked it the first time I watched it, but unlike other Star Trek movies, after I watched it a second time, it just felt more like a generic action movie. So, I don't dislike it, but it's not really my favorite ever, but it is very special to me because it leads to Star Trek Enterprise. Star Trek Enterprise is kind of a bit of a sequel to Star Trek First Contact. And I do love talking about Star Trek Enterprise. But is this device here a video game console? Or a video game at all? Well, dedicated consoles exist, and they count as video game consoles. And the Game Boy is a portable video game console. It counts as video games. So I'm calling this a video game. This simple little electronic game. Star Trek First Contact by MGA, Micro Games America, I believe. Alright, and the most special thing about this is the packaging. Just check it out. The packaging just looks like Star Trek. Very Star Trek-like looking object. In fact, the game device itself is shaped like a Star Trek The Next Generation movie era or Deep Space Nine and Voyager era communicator badge. The iconic imagery of, the iconic icon of Starfleet. The emblem of Starfleet. And can these games be good? These crude electronic games? Actually, I have seen in the past good electronic games based on Star Trek. But is this one of them? Well, the package is really cool, and it does give you a big chrome communicator badge, Starfleet emblem. And the art on the back, we see a Sovereign class starship going up against looks like a Borg cube and some Borg spheres. So one Federation ship going up against the Borg. Perhaps it should be the other way around. Perhaps it should be one Borg cube going up against a whole bunch of Federation ships to properly represent First Contact. But they probably figured this would work better. You probably want to play as the Enterprise, the Sovereign class Enterprise from First Contact, and thus you fight against multiple antagonists. Alright, let's take a look at this. Yep, there we go. That's it. This is the game. Ain't it exciting? Well, you know what? A simple little game like this can be pretty fun, but to me it feels like sometimes you just end up crashing into a Borg sphere and losing one of your 3 ships. You have 3 chances, basically. You can take damage 3 times. And it's too easy to get damaged or destroyed, I find. It doesn't feel like a challenge. It almost feels like automatic. But then again, maybe I just haven't played this enough. I don't know. The gameplay, I wouldn't recommend this for the gameplay. You get a Sovereign class starship, most likely the NCC-1701E Enterprise, and you're battling. There's a Borg cube, and it seems to generate some Borg spheres. And you get to fire your phasers. That's all good, but the gameplay itself doesn't really come off all that fun. Doesn't feel like a natural challenge. It just feels like, yeah, you know you're going to crash into things, and you don't feel like you have that much control over it. You just have 3 positions on the screen that your ship is going to be in. So, the main thing about this is the imagery on the package and the actual physical shape of the device itself. If you're won over by this shiny Starfleet communicator badge, a giant communicator badge actually, because it's too big to be a communicator badge. But you know what? If you take a look at this is the game in demo mode. Doesn't take any damage, plays naturally. This is the demo, so you're not playing this. This is the game playing itself, and that's as exciting as it gets, probably. And it doesn't have that audio, which you might find to be okay, or you might dislike the audio. So this is a quiet mode where you watch a Sovereign-class starship fight the Borg. And of course, as you know, First Contact, that was when the Borg traveled, they traveled to Earth, battled Starfleet. When they lost the battle, they went back in time to assimilate Earth in the past before the humans from Earth could develop warp drive and make contact with the Vulcans. Thus, the Borg took over the United Federation of Planets for a timeline that existed or was only shown briefly because the Enterprise followed it back in time and saved the day. And not only being a sequel to Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek The Original Series, Star Trek Generations, all that, it's also a movie that led up to Star Trek Enterprise. And I do like talking about Star Trek Enterprise, and I do talk about Enterprise in other videos. Any excuse I could talk about Star Trek Enterprise is great, because I absolutely love Star Trek Enterprise. To this day, it's still my favorite television show. So that's why Star Trek First Contact is special to me. One of the 2 reasons. It shows the origins of humans getting out into space and developing warp drive, and also it leads up to Star Trek Enterprise, and I really like Star Trek Enterprise and anything to do with Star Trek Enterprise. I was also a big fan of The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine as well. And Star Trek in general. So I talk about Star Trek in other videos. You can feel free to look for those. I also tend to talk about Ghostbusters or Sonic the Hedgehog anytime I have a chance to. And there actually is one other electronic game that is based on Star Trek that I know of that is actually good. And it was made by Tiger Electronics, whom a lot of people criticize for making a lot of bad games. But Star Trek The Next Generation, for the Tiger Electronic game based on that, actually was pretty good if you have a copy that, if you have one that works really well, then the game itself plays really well. But as for this one, the Star Trek First Contact little miniature arcade game, it's not that special. You see what it is. If it looks interesting to you, maybe you might find one on eBay that you might want. Otherwise, you see how it plays. You may or may not be interested in it whatsoever. You're probably not going to get it for the gameplay. Anyway, feel free to check out some of my other videos.